Hey everybody, Eric Grenier here with Philippe J. Fournier for this week's episode of The Numbers. Philippe, have you got your bags packed?
Good morning, Eric. And the answer is yes. So I'm leaving tomorrow Friday, for Winnipeg, where it's minus double digits this morning, but it's okay.
The dry cold,
it's
though.
Okay. So. That's what I heard. I'm not sure what that means, though. I'm in Montreal. It's always humid cold, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yes, we are getting ready for the NDP leadership contest to end. And we're going to talk about this morning. We have polls on the NDP leadership. We have federal polls. We had a poll on Pierre Poilievre's appearance on Joe Rogan from Abacus Data. We have also some provincial polls. And to avoid the surprise that you had last week, I just warn everybody, I have a quiz this weekend. It's this week. It's an NDP-themed quiz, so I hope our listeners and viewers will follow along and try to beat Eric, because I did not make it easy, just to warn you. No.
Okay, well, the last few have been pretty tough. But anyway, we'll get to that.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's right. So this weekend, it is finally the end of the NDP leadership contest. The post has been vacant since 11 months ago, when Jagmeet Singh announced on election night that he was resigning.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that NDP leadership race. Now, the party is not doing particularly well right now. They're down to 6 MPs after losing one to a floor crosser. We kind of all expect Alexandre Boulris to probably announce in the next couple of weeks if he's resigning or not. And the polls are still showing largely single digits for the NDP, but it is still one of the storied parties of Canadian politics, forms government right now in 2 provinces, and official opposition in 1, 2, 3? Ontario, Nova Scotia, Alberta,
4.
and Saskatchewan. 4.
Yeah, 4.
And you know what? If anybody is watching this, it should be the Conservatives, because they certainly want to see a healthy and happy NDP to take away some of that Liberal vote.
Absolutely.
So going into this leadership race, going into the contest that we have this weekend, voting has been going on for the last 2 to 3 weeks. I think it started March 9th.
Yep.
What are you expecting? What do you think? What are you looking for when we start trolling the halls of that the convention center in downtown Winnipeg?
Well, what is interesting about these conventions, and I mentioned that I went to the Conservative convention in Calgary in January, is not to talk to people, but let people talk to you. So obviously a bunch of political nerds will be there, and I say this very
including 2 of us. Yeah.
That's right, but I say this affectionately. This is a positive comment that I'm making, and so when they see me and they see us, they will come say, "Hey, hello, I read your stuff and stuff, and I don't like your projections." I expect to hear that a lot, but it's interesting then to ask, okay, so where you're from. Who are you leading towards? Are you working for any of the candidates? And usually you let them do the talking. So I'm looking forward to see the vibe there. Avi Lewis, and we discussed this in recent episodes, Eric, you pulled the fundraising numbers. Avi Lewis should win this if we go by the data that's been made available. The polls, the name recognition, the support among NDP voters, not members, but voters, and the fundraising, which all of these numbers look advantageous to Avi Lewis. And so if he doesn't win, it would be not a shock, but a big surprise. It would be an upset. So I'm looking forward to see. Sometimes the data is misleading. Perhaps there will be an upset, perhaps there won't. And if Monsieur Lewis does win, will it be a quick victory, or will it take many ballots for him to get to that 50% line? So that's what I'm looking for. I'm not sure what to expect, but it's okay not to expect anything. I'm going there to meet people, have a little fun, have a drink in Winnipeg, and get to know better the NDP members. What about you, Eric?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the vibe. I'm wondering if there'll be any Orange Crush available for a drink somewhere around the convention floor. That would be expected. Yeah, I've not actually been to an NDP convention before, so I'm actually kind of interested to see what the mood is like. Like, I've been to some Liberal ones, like when Mark Carney won the leadership. I think I went to one of the policy ones a few years ago. I've been to a couple of the Conservative leadership conventions, the one that Andrew Scheer won, Pierre Poilievre. So been to a couple of, so I have an idea of how those parties and those folks kind of get together at these events. So I'm curious to see how the NDP is. But yeah, the vibe from members, how they feel about things. As you said, where they're from, like, do we see a lot of representation from Western Canada? Do we see some, NDP members from Atlantic Canada, Quebec? I think that'll be interesting to see. And also, there's been lots of discussion about the relationship between the federal party and the provincial sections, and how it could be fraught in some cases. But Wab Kinew is giving sort of a welcome speech on Friday, and Merritt Stiles is giving one, I believe, on Saturday. So, nice. You see like two pretty important provincial leaders are going to be at the convention. So that'll be interesting to see what they say, and if they even if they address the issue, they probably won't. But so we're going to just talk a little bit about our expectations. We're going to do our usual over/under lines for each of the candidates. But before we do that, we did see a couple polls that came out this week. One from the Angus Reid Institute, one from Liaison Strategies, about the leadership contestants and about the kind of perception of the party. The Angus Reid Institute one was probably the most interesting one, because what they did was they found in their big, huge poll that they did recently of 3,000 or 4,000 people.
4,000, yeah.
They found just over 1,000 Canadians who had voted for the NDP at least once since 2015. So 2015, 2019, 2021, 2025 elections. So at least someone who has voted for the NDP in the past, so not necessarily going to vote for them in the future, but has been open to them in the past. And asked some kind of questions about, how they feel about the party, how they feel about the candidates. The numbers were not very promising for the NDP.
Oh, God. I scrolled through that poll, and I encourage viewers and listeners to go see it. It's on the angusreid.org website. The name recognition, 13% would choose Avi Lewis if they had a vote. That's the leader. Mm-hmm. That's the highest share. 44% of those who voted NDP in the past decade said they did not recognize any of the names. We know that it's not the Liberal or the Conservatives. The NDP took a major hit last year, so it's not like it's a huge surprise. The NDP is in rebuild mode. We know that. But to see that data pulled, and again, as you said, a big sample of former NDP voters, it's the next leader will have his or her work cut out for them. Because so Avi Lewis 13%, McPherson 9%, none of these 5%, and then the three others with 3% or less. It'll be very interesting to see how the winner of this convention, this leadership convention, works in the short term. Obviously, we think that the Liberals will reach their majority very soon, even though a very short majority. So perhaps they will have some runway, some few years to rebuild the party. But we could also have a federal election in 2027. That's next year. Yeah. And so the NDP has to get ready. The rebuild cannot take a decade. It has to be quite fast.
Yeah, some of these numbers, so they asked, again, these are people who have voted for the NDP in the past, so it's not talking to, dyed-in-the-wool Liberals and Conservatives. Yeah. I managed to find about a quarter of those agreed with the statement, the party is irrelevant. So they had about 2/3 who disagreed with that statement, so at least they had 2/3 that disagreed with it. But this one I thought was actually far more kind of problematic. They had about 40% who agreed with the statement, the NDP's best days are behind it, versus 47% who said they disagreed with that statement. So I think that is a bit of an issue for the party, because there's not a lot of enthusiasm right now surrounding the party. It only found that about, I think, 50% of the people who have voted for them at least once in the last 4 elections, would consider voting for them in the future, in the next election. When they took that as part of the whole electorate, you only had 13% of everybody, because they had 75% who had never voted for the NDP, and then they had the chunk that said they wouldn't consider them. But only 13% were people who have voted for the NDP in the last 4 elections, and says they were either very likely or likely to vote for them again. Yeah, 13% is not a great ceiling, because I looked at it. Only 4 times has the NDP failed to at least get 13% of the vote. So the next leader has a huge amount of work to do. 1, for getting name recognition up, and 2, getting some kind of feeling around the party that they have some reason to be optimistic, to give voters a reason to think that they're voting for a vehicle that is going somewhere rather than going down. So it is going to be a big challenge.
It is also, let's not forget the equation of happiness. Eric, you know the equation of happiness, right?
I do not know.
It's reality minus expectations. That's what it is, right? Right now, the expectations are very, very, very low. Like, I don't think anybody expects the NDP to do well short term. And so if the new leader polls at 15% next summer, then I think we will say, oh, the NDP is back to, well, not competitiveness, but at least respectability. Because that's 6.3% of the vote that the NDP had last year is an anomaly. It's not supposed to be that bad. It's not. There's not 6.3% of voters who are left of center in this country. Or well, like really left of center in this country. And so I think the bar is set so low that the NDP, the NDP should be doing better than this in normal times. So perhaps the next leader will have a kind of a boost if they poll at 12%, as I said, in 4 months from now. And that vote comes maybe equally from the Conservatives and from the Liberals, maybe some blue workers, unionized workers, which Poilievre really worked on in the past few years. So there's this silver lining, because obviously I look at this poll and there's not much good news in there for NDP supporters. There is a silver lining, because I don't think the party can get lower than this. So I know it sounds bad to say that, but do we expect the NDP to do 4% in the next election? Not really. It's very unlikely. But as you said, so how likely are you to consider the NDP in the next federal election, whenever that may be? From former NDP voters of the past decade, so that's 4 general elections, 52% said very likely or likely. No, that's not a whole lot, but it's a base to work on. Perhaps you can get back some of those voters who voted for the NDP in 2019 and 2021, but decided to go with Mark Carney next time. There is space on the spectrum on the left of Mark Carney. Let's see if the next NDP leader can take this, can occupy this space.
And like I said, the Conservatives need this. If you look at all the elections that they've ever won since the NDP was formed, okay? These are elections where the PCs or the Conservatives formed a government. The NDP had 14% in 1962. They had 18% in 1979. They had 19% in 1984. They had 20% in 1988. They had 17% 2006, 18% 2008, and 31% in 2011. It's really not plausible or possible for the Conservatives to win when the NDP is as low as it's been. Now, they did come pretty close in the last election.
Yeah.
But if, in the scenario when Pierre Poilievre was going to win by 20 points or whatever, the NDP was doing pretty well. They were starting to get into the 18, 19, 20.
That's right.
So it's not just about the rebuilding of the NDP for the sake of the NDP. Conservatives need the NDP to be doing better. Now, they don't want them to be doing so good that they start to eat into their own vote, but they need the NDP to get off of the mat, and the Liberals need them to stay down where they are. So that's pretty clear, the stakes for the other parties. We still got to see who's going to end up winning this. Now, Liaison found that you still got half of the voters who, this is the general population, said that Avi Lewis, they were unfamiliar with him. 2/3 were unfamiliar with McPherson. And then you had like 72% unfamiliar with Ashton and 90% or so for both McQuail and Johnston. So again, that is going to be the first task. These are not known names.
Yeah.
Pierre Poilievre was getting better known during the leadership race, and he was already a bit known. Justin Trudeau was already a household name when he won the leadership. Jagmeet Singh was not well known, but he did get a lot of attention during the leadership race because because of the fact he's a Sikh and he wears a turban. Something that we haven't seen as a leader before got a lot of attention.
Yeah.
But Avi Lewis, we've had 2 Lewises before. I was thinking about this. I want to get to the lines, but.
We mentioned last week, and you said, "Oh, there's no way people remember Stephen Lewis and David Lewis, right?"
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, well, that's not.
Well, we'll see. But
NDPers would, but
we've had lots of father sons or father grandfather grandson kind of combinations. People can think of a lot of them.
Really? Okay.
Obviously, there's Trudeau. There was. Did you know that one of John A. Macdonald's son was Premier of Manitoba for a very short amount of time?
Really?
Yeah. Anyway, so
the first Premier of Ontario was a Macdonald. Was he related to John A?
No, but his first name was John. No, it was John Sandfield McDonald, but
John McDonald.
Very. There was only like 3
Apologies.
names back then. It was the old time.
Yeah.
Anyway, my point is, I'm not sure, and if anybody can find this, but I don't think we've had 3 generations of party leaders. I'm not sure if that is something that we've ever seen before.
Oh, that's interesting.
So if anybody can think of one, I'd be curious to hear it. But like, that's kind of insane, right? His grandfather was leader of the NDP in the 1970s. His father was leader of the Ontario NDP again in the 1970s. They're actually leaders of the parties at the same time. And and now Avi Lewis seems to be the favorite. So let's get to whether he will actually win or not. So we're going to do our over-unders.
Yep.
We do this all the time. It's more about not making a prediction, but kind of setting expectations. So we'll start at the bottom from the fundraising figures. So Tony McQuail has raised the least amount of money, so kind of expectation that he'd fit at the bottom. Now, I'll set a line. You have to say if you would take the over or the under on it.
We're talking about the first ballot, right?
First ballot.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay. Just to make sure.
So I'll put Tony McQuail at, let's say, 3% on the first ballot.
Ooh. I'm taking the under.
Taking the under?
Yeah, taking the under. I mean, it's, again, it was... There are leadership races that sometimes you don't really expect to be leader, but you want to build a name within a community, within, maybe perhaps having being nominated for a riding to be candidate somewhere. These are not big candidates that could make a big change. I'm sorry for them, but the fundraising, the numbers that we have, so 3% is generous. I think I'm going to go under.
Okay, then I'm going to reset it because I think I'd also do under. What if I did 2.5?
Oh, come on. That's about where I expect it to be, so I'll still take the under, like 2.2 or something.
Okay. I'll take just a bit over. I wonder if a lot of people will rank him first out of kind of sympathy and understanding that he won't do that well. And so okay, I'll take the over on 2.5 for Tony McQuail. All right, Tanil Johnston, why don't you set the line for her?
My line was at 3%, so perhaps I'm misreading the sympathy that the smaller candidates have. But I just don't see them moving the needle. Again, we know that we are limited in the data that we have. When it's the Liberals or the Conservatives in the polls, we don't get many members in the polls, but we get a bigger sample of the general population, and it tends to get closer to what members think. Here, it's so limited. So 3%, I say, for Johnston.
I'll take the over on 3% for Johnston. I think she's raised a little bit more money than that. She's from Vancouver Island. There's lots of NDP members in British Columbia. So I can imagine her getting over 3%. And actually, I wouldn't be surprised if she was more like around 5 on that first ballot. So
okay. I'll take the under. But, that's interesting. Okay. Right.
I do wonder if there'll be a lot of people being like, I really like her, but, I'm going to put McPherson first. I'm going to put Avi Lewis first. And I'll put her second. And she never sees that vote at all.
Yeah.
I remember in the 2017 leadership race for the Conservatives, Deepak Oberoi, everybody loved Deepak. And, people thought, he did really poorly on the first ballot, less than 1%, because people probably put him second or third because they didn't think that he would ever get to use that vote. All right. So next up would be Rob Ashton.
This is the most puzzling. This is the puzzling. Yeah. I would not be surprised to see a 15, but I would not be surprised to see a 6 too.
Mm-hmm. He started off well, and then he kind of seemed to have lost some energy, especially with that AI Reddit thing.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
But he's from BC as well, and he does seem to have decent labor support. I'll put the line at 13.
Ooh. Okay, that's close to where I would have put this line. Taking the under. Am I taking the under on everybody, right? Yes, I am.
Yeah, you're adding up to a first ballot victory. That's what you're doing. If you're going to take the under on 13, I will take the over. I think that he'll still do okay. And again, if people think if they go in thinking that it's a McPherson versus Lewis race, then maybe they think there's no problem with ranking Ashton first if they put one of the other two second. So I'll take the over on 13% for Rob Ashton.
Okay, before I go to McPherson, I'd like to insert another one. in there. We'll get to McPherson in a second,
Okay.
and Lewis, of course. So right now our lines for Ashen, Johnston, and McWales: 13, 3, and 2.5. So that would be 18.5 if my math is correct. If I said a side line of 16% for all three of them combined, would you put the over or the under?
I think I'd put the over. I think a lot of New Democrats are going to put more of a sympathy vote than in other parties. So I think I could see them getting over 16.
Okay. Which leaves us to the two frontrunners. Now, in our December episode, our yearly, annual, over-under episode, one of the lines that you and I had was the number of ballots in this race. And I think I remember setting the line at 1.5, and you took the over and I took the under. So I said in December, 1 ballot. Which means that if I put McPherson at like 30% or 35%, probably there will be a second ballot, right? It's not impossible. It's just, again, this is a forced predictions, right? So I will set the line for Miss McPherson at 25%.
Ooh, okay. I thought you were going to go to 30. Okay, that's interesting. She's also a puzzle, right?
Yes.
Has a lot of establishment support, has a lot of support in Alberta.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of members in Alberta because if you're a member of a provincial section of the NDP, you're a member of the federal, although in Alberta, you do have the ability to opt out.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You have to opt out, though. It's not like an opt-in, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And if there's a lot of Alberta members who at the beginning of the race might have been like, not that interested in it, but now are like, I think Lewis could be problematic for us in Alberta. Maybe they get galvanized to run. But based on like the fundraising and that kind of thing, it looks like the share of members that Alberta has is probably somewhere around 15 to 20%, which isn't really enough to boost her up to 30-something. But can I imagine her getting like a 23 or a 24 versus a 27 or a 28? If you put 25, I think I'll take the over.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take the under.
Oh, wow.
So the thing is, okay, so our previous line, again, it's 18% for all the other three, 25% for this one, for Miss McPherson. So that's combined 43%. So I think Avi Lewis will have more than 57%. So I have to be logical here and not hedge my bets. So yes, I'm taking the under. Also, wow. I mean, we don't know how this is gonna go. Like when Mark Carney won the Liberal leadership last year, it was not a surprise. But weren't we both there when they read the numbers? I was like, wait, did he say Chrystia Freeland had 7% or 8%?
Like, what? Someone must have forgot to carry the one on that.
Yeah, exactly.
That was shocking.
So I would that be shocking if Avi Lewis had like 75% of the votes? No, it would not be. So and I know it's high, but it would not be. And so if I have to go with this, I mean, Miss McPherson, as you said, establishment support. She's clearly qualified to be NDP leader. It's just that I don't think she's going to get it. And
all right.
30% would have been. I mean, 30% would be a good result for her. I mean, she would be disappointed, and so would her team. But yeah, I'll take the under 25%. So.
All right. Well, I mean, that means I have to choose. I could have done an easy 50% line for Avi Lewis.
Well, I mean, we would agree on that line, though, right?
Yeah, but that's kind of dull. That's just like, who's going to win in the first ballot? So I'll actually put it at 55 based on everything you've said.
Oh, slamming the over here. It's going to be
really
55. Yeah, slamming the over. No.
Wow. Okay, you're slamming the 60.
Slamming. Okay, now we're talking. 60 would mean that the three smaller candidates, you know what I mean, the three, the bottom three.
The three who have struggled to raise money, which
Yes.
is largely the data set we're working with.
would get like 15 and Miss McPherson would get 25. So if my math is correct, that's 40. And then Monsieur Lewis would have 60. So if I have to be logical with my vote and not hedge, I have to take the over at 60. Will you take the under at 60?
Yeah, I'll take the under on 60. I'm not
Okay.
convinced he actually wins on the first ballot. So
Really?
I
Okay.
would say that I would lean towards that he does, but I would not say that I'm not more than I think 55-45 on the first ballot.
60 is high, though. That's true. 60 is high.
Hey,
But-
it's locked in. You already.
Yeah, but thing is, I have to say though, I mean, if you pushed a little bit, like if you'd ask me 63, 64, I would go like, well, hang on here. Because again, if Rob Ashton takes 20%, which it seems high, but we could be surprised. His strength among unions could be a factor. So wow, we're flying blind here.
Yeah.
These over-unders are always fun to do, but sometimes we have more data to justify our picks. Now we don't really. So I'm going to take the over on 60, but I have to say it's pushing it. It would be 57, 58 would be would feel better, but I'll take the over. So.
Okay. All right. Well, there we go. We'll see what's going to happen.
Interesting.
I mean, I was surprised in 2017 when Jagmeet Singh won on the first ballot.
Yeah.
I think he got 54 or something like that in the first ballot. So that was a bit of a surprise. So sometimes we get some surprises. Nikki Ashton almost finished second, ahead of Charlie Angus in 2017. So I wouldn't be. We're setting the lines because we're forcing ourselves to kind of set our expectations, and that'll kind of color how we see the results. If we do see that Lewis gets 55, 57 on the first ballot, we're not going to be like, oh my God, what happened?
Yeah.
Like, because we've already kind of set these lines. But if he ends up getting a 42, then we're going to be like, oh, okay. Maybe there's more divisions in the party than we'd expected. So I think that's kind of the point of the exercise. And when we do have the results, we're hoping that we can record a post-result kind of episode.
Yeah.
Not sure if we'll put it for just the members or the public, but either way, we are going to have some hot takes on the results, especially if it goes according to plan, because there's flights everybody has to take. But
let me ask you this: if we were to talk about unexpected events of this, I mean, expect the unexpected is such a cliche, but which of these scenarios, which we do not expect, do you think is more likely? Lewis getting 40% on the first ballot, or Lewis getting 70%? Like, which of these two do you think is most likely? And we agree they're not likely, but among these two.
For me, I'd say I'd be less surprised with a 40 than I would with a 70.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I would disagree, but I don't expect that either scenario to happen. But I don't know. We've seen some really lopsided leadership races in the past that maybe it's going to be close, or maybe it's going to be, and it really wasn't close. I mean, Naheed Nenshi, we all knew he was going to win. We didn't think he'd get like 87.
Yeah.
Or, no, was it 90? Or anyway, it was.
He got like 86, 87.
Something like crazy, right? Same thing for Poilievre. I remember entering that convention hall in Ottawa, Poilievre was going to win. Jean Charest was going to finish a distant second, but we did not expect that lopsided result. And so, I don't know. Maybe I'm more immune to the surprise of lopsided result than the surprise of a close result. So maybe that'll change. Maybe I'll come back from Winnipeg says, I learned my lesson. So there you go.
All right, we'll tune in. We'll find out. All right, let's move to some of the federal polls. We got a whole bunch of them. While we're on the NDP, why don't I just go? We got Angus Reid Institute Liaison and Nanos that came out for national polls. Had 9 for the NDP, 9 for the NDP, 12 for the NDP. We had some polls from Atlantic Canada and Manitoba from Narrative Research and Probe Research. And we also had a new poll fresh this morning from Abacus Data on the Joe Rogan Experience for Pierre Poilievre and how he experienced that podcast. What catches your eyes here? What do you want to start with?
Let's start with Joe Rogan.
Okay.
I'm not a regular listener of Joe Rogan, but obviously I know who the guy is, and I see clips of his show all the time. Mostly
I used
when
to watch Fear Factor, but when they would eat spiders and stuff, no, didn't like that.
Oh, we had a Quebec version of that show, but that's the late '90s, right? That's another century. It's a long time ago. Yeah. Sorry, that threw me off a bit. But usually when I see the clips online, because I'm not a regular listener, it's because it's outrageous stuff. There was nothing outrageous in that performance. Pierre Poilievre sounded okay. They had a nice conversation. Okay, the martial arts section was not for me, but it's for a lot of people. And that poll from Abacus. So let me pull this up here because my window just closed. But that poll from Abacus, there's a sense that Monsieur Poilievre did okay. That more young men listened to it than women, and that I don't know. I read the data and I saw nothing that stood out. It was basically okay. He did okay. That probably didn't move the needle. What did you take out of this poll, Eric?
Yeah, what I found was interesting was the fact that the results of the poll weren't shocking or surprising.
Lukewarm.
They kind of aligned with what we expected, that a lot of people either saw or heard about it, and that generally people responded well to Poilievre's performance. So the poll found that 16% of Canadians said they watched or listened to some of it.
That's like 6 million people.
That's a
lot of people.
There's another thing we always have to think about when it comes about polls. People who participate in polls tend to be more participatory in everything, including voting.
But that's still millions. That's millions of people, though.
Yeah. It's still millions of people, and we knew that already from the audience. The size of the audience is big. Yeah. But 16% said they watched or listened to at least some of it, and 40%, which is probably the more important chunk in a way, said they heard something about it. They either read about it, they watched news reports on it, or they heard other people talk about it. They saw it on social media. So you do have a majority of the respondents of the poll who had at least some exposure to the podcast. So as we expected, it had a big reach. And of the people who had some awareness of it, 39% had a positive impression of Pierre Poilievre's kind of performance on it, and 24% had a negative. Now, for someone whose negatives are usually outweighing his positives,
that's good.
That's a good result for Pierre Poilievre. And again, it's kind of as we expected. There's one kind of thing that kind of surprised me was, so before when it was rumored and when we found the news that he was going to go on it, a lot of people said that this is a risky move because Joe Rogan has sometimes taken controversial positions on some issues. And will the fact that he's even going on the podcast be a problem? But the poll did not really find that Joe Rogan is a toxic person in Canada or seen controversially or anything like that, because it found that 23% of Canadians said they had a positive impression of Joe Rogan and 23% had a negative one. So he's, right down the middle. So the fact that he went on the podcast itself is not necessarily going to be an issue because Joe Rogan is not a polarizing kind of figure in Canada. So that's kind of my expectation.
Yeah.
But from these numbers, it doesn't seem likely we're going to see a 5-point jump for the Conservatives in the next couple of weeks.
No, but as you said, the risk. I mean, if Poilievre comes out of this interview with a net neutral, it's not a win, but it's not a loss, and it could have been a loss, right? No, Joe Rogan was actually very, very disciplined in that interview. He didn't veer off too much into these crazy conspiracy theories that he has in the past. But when you look at, you just said, so 39% had a positive impression, 24% had a negative impression, so that's a plus 15, which is pretty good. But again, that's those who listened to it or had heard of it. What's interesting is when you break down the numbers by a vote, and Abacus data, thank you for doing this, break that by 2025 federal vote. Among Liberals, 25% had net positive, 41% had net negative. It's net negative, but minus 16 among Liberals, that's a pretty good score for Poilievre.
Well, because if you're already voting for the Liberals,
you don't like Poilievre.
You don't like him to begin with. So if 25% of Liberals said they didn't mind it, like the Conservatives would love to have a fraction of those move over to them.
That's pretty good. And the NDP vote now, obviously, that's a small sample. It's the 2025 NDP vote, right? 20% positive, 45% negative. So yeah, Monsieur Poilievre did well. This poll seems to indicate that the interview will not hurt him in the future, which is, I think, very interesting. And again, it was a long interview, over 2 hours. And over 2 hours of a politician just talking freely, sometimes you can say one dumb thing that becomes the story. And I don't think we saw that. At least I didn't see it. So
no, and I think the things that kind of broke through in terms of clips were positive things for Poilievre. It was, him telling off Donald Trump. And
knock that shit. I was surprised by that, weren't you?
Yeah. Well, sure.
Okay. Yeah.
But also, one of the clips I saw a lot was that when Poilievre had a chance to take a run at Carney, he said he wouldn't criticize his prime minister on foreign soil. And you had Rogan be like, "Oh, you Canadians are so polite," that kind of thing. Like, if that's the clip you saw and you like Mark Carney, you're probably like, "Oh, that's respectful. Oh, look at this guy. He's not being partisan." So I do think that the overall effect will probably be a net positive. I just don't know how much. But one of the things we also discussed was whether this was actually going to reach beyond his already fertile base. That's a bit of one of the findings here was that among those under the age of 45, positive and who had some exposure to the podcast, 50% had a positive view, 19 had a negative. So that's very good. But that's a group that already is pretty friendly to Poilievre. Among those 60 and over, it was a net negative, 22 positive, 30% a negative. And that is not as great for Poilievre because the Conservatives really need to get that boomer vote back, or at least some of it.
Some of it, yeah.
And so this does not suggest that it would help that much on that front, which we could have guessed already, but this just kind of confirms it. So it's always kind of nice when we, I appreciate that Abacus Data did this.
Oh, yeah.
And it's nice, though, when we have data kind of back up anecdote or expectations or, so I think that's good because if we saw results here like that he bombed or that it was 90-10 loved it, and then we'd be like, well, I guess we don't know anything. So it's nice to at least see that, not that much out of touch.
The effect could be also long-term. And I think, more Americans than Canadians watch the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yes, of course.
So, of course. And so I wonder if we will ever have numbers, and maybe I know some Canadian firms have samples in the United States. Léger, the Industry Institute, sometimes Abacus does American polls, and I'd be curious to see what Rogan listeners south of the border think, because his message was basically in line with the government, the Liberal government, saying like tariffs are hurting both sides of the border, and we are looking for a better deal that will not include tariffs. And and when he said, "I wish Donald Trump not that s off," using that swear word in the podcast, and I know people swear on this podcast, but it felt stronger. Like it really felt like he was taking a swipe at Trump, which he really never has strongly in north of the border. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting that he rebuffed the attacks of Donald Trump from last year. Anyway, so
okay. Maybe we can just because we went on the NDP, so we can review these polls pretty quickly.
Quickly. The thing is, what I want to say about the polls, Eric. Mm-hmm. Like, again, we had the trackers, and we had the Industry Institute, and we had some regional polls. But we may have seen the peak of Liberal support.
We mentioned that last week, right?
We mentioned that last week. Like, where is the ceiling? We must be close to it. Well, I will wait for the next Léger and the next round of polling. But it looks like the high 40s was a peak for the Liberals, don't you think?
Yeah, because we got 44 in the Angus Street Institute poll. We have 46 in Liaison, 46 in Nanos. Yeah. The Conservatives were at 33 in Nanos, 32 Liaison, 36 Conservative in the Angus Street Institute, which was a jump of 4 points, which is interesting to note. But beyond that, not a lot of huge surprises in the numbers. Narrative in Atlantic Canada had a huge number for the Liberals, 67 to 22 for the Conservatives, and it didn't really matter which province. The Liberals were ahead in New Brunswick, Newfoundland, Labrador, PI, and Nova Scotia. And Probe Research in Manitoba had a 7-point lead for the Liberals, 46 to 39.
Yeah.
Conservatives won Manitoba by like 6 points, so that's a big swing.
That's a big swing. It would not swing a lot of seats, maybe one or two, but it is a big swing. Yeah. The number, I think, from that poll, again, not to go back always to the NDP, but 8% for the NDP in Manitoba, where you have an NDP government that's very popular. I don't know. That's a bad sign for the federal NDP. But
there's a lot of Canoe Carney voters.
Yes, they
I
are.
wonder if we'll meet any. Well, probably not going to meet any of the NDP federal convention.
Well, so last year you could. I mean, I think is what I wonder about this convention. Will we meet NDP members that said I skipped the NDP last year? Because those exist, like real NDP voters. There's more than 6% NDP voters in this country. Will there be some who said, yeah, I didn't like the campaign, I didn't like the issues, I didn't like Jagmeet Singh, I'm coming back to the NDP and I hope to vote for them, but I didn't vote for them in 2025. So I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Let's go quickly. We had 2 polls, provincial polls. Manitoba Probe did one federal, so they did one provincially, and we had an Ipsos poll from out of Ontario. Again, that's what's kind of nuts about this, right? You just said 8% federal support for the NDP in Manitoba, but Probe found 55% support for the
same poll
Canoe NDP.
Same poll, same
voters,
sample.
same respondents. Yeah,
incredible, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. And Ipsos had a 42 for the PCs, 35 for the Liberals, 18 for the NDP. Ford's approval was 42 to 49, which is better than we've seen in the Angus Reid Institute.
Yeah.
But not. I don't know. Not too shocking, any of these numbers, but do you have any reflections on them?
Just the Ontario Liberals at 35, leaderless in the midst of a leadership race that hasn't really started, right? But it will get underway soon. 35 is higher than usual. This could be some spillover from the federal numbers, but no. Ford and the PCs are in no danger right now, still in Ontario.
Hey, if we see Canoe we should ask him if he wants to have an election this year, because 20-point lead, I mean...
Tempting, huh?
Yeah. All right, let's move to the quiz. You had a quiz, let's get to it.
Okay, all right. So this is an NDP-themed quiz, and I learned a lot by writing this quiz. So my friend, here's how it's going to work. I have 10 trivia questions about NDP and NDP leaders and NDP election results.
Okay.
So it's simple trivia. Gold is 9 out of 10.
Oof.
Silver is 8, bronze is 7, and under 7 it's shame. It seems a bit harsh, but you have 3 strikes. So if you have an answer wrong, it's a strike. You can decide to guess again or pass.
Okay.
So 3 free strikes. So I think that's pretty good. So I'm taking out my phone right now with my little Shiva. Because the first question has a timer, and I want to put it there. Because the thing is, I know you know the answer. It's just that I want you to answer fast. Are you ready? Hang on. Why isn't it working? Hang on. Stopwatch. Okay.
How much time do I got?
You have 15 seconds to answer this question. So this is number 1. So once I finish asking the questions, I'll start the timer.
All right. Is that for all of them or just this one?
No, it's just for the first question.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Eric, I would like you, in chronological order from past to present, give me all permanent leaders of the NDP, and the timer starts now.
All right. There was Tommy Douglas. There was David Lewis. There was then Ed Broadbent. There was Audrey McLaughlin, Alexa McDonough.
10 seconds.
Jack Layton, Tom Mulcair, Jagmeet Singh, and whoever wins on Sunday.
Oh, just on time.
Did I do it? Okay.
Yes, you did in 14 seconds. You get the point. Congratulations. You couldn't take a strike on this one.
Okay.
So you have the first point. Okay. Now more traditional trivia questions. Eric, number 2. In the 1962 federal election, the NDP's first election since its creation, NDP leader Tommy Douglas ran in the riding of Regina City, but was soundly defeated by his progressive conservative opponent. Douglas eventually entered the House of Commons in a by-election in the next year in this British Columbia riding. Now, to be fair, you don't necessarily have to have the exact riding name, but it has to be close.
Okay. I believe it was Burnaby Coquitlam.
Final answer?
Yeah.
The name of the riding was Burnaby Coquitlam.
Yay.
So you get the second point. How do you know that? Anyway. In the 1968 federal election, number 3, Douglas's riding of Burnaby Coquitlam was heavily redrawn. not to say butchered, in the redistricting. And he lost re-election in the riding of Burnaby Seymour. Douglas re-entered the House of Commons in a 1969 by-election in a new riding. He would later be re-elected in this new riding until his retirement in 1979. Where was this riding?
That I'm not sure. I can't remember. I think did he return to Regina? I think he returned to Regina. Regina riding.
That's a first strike. Do you want to guess again, or do you want to pass?
I think I'll pass because I don't know.
Okay. You got 2 out of 3 and 1 strike. Okay.
What was it?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I have to tell you this. Nanaimo, Cowichan, the Islands. You could have said Vancouver Island and I would have accepted it.
I was not going to get that. Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that. Number 4. At the 1971 NDP Leadership Convention, David Lewis became the second permanent federal NDP leader, winning a tough battle on the 4th ballot. On the first ballot, there were 4 other candidates against Lewis. I will give you a point if you can name 2 of the leadership candidates who ran against Lewis. And I will give you a free strike here, meaning that you can have 3 shots at naming 2 of his rivals.
Was one of them Lorne Nystrom?
No.
Oh,
that's your free strike.
Okay, I think Lewis did he beat James Laxer?
Is that one of your answers?
Yeah.
Yes, James Laxer was on the ballot.
So I need one more.
You need one more in one guess to get the point.
1971. Oh my goodness.
People are screaming at their devices now.
Oh wait, it was Ed Broadbent. He was also in it.
Ed Broadbent was also in it.
Yes.
And John Paul Harney and Frank Howard were the other contestants.
I wouldn't have got those other 2.
You got the point, my friend. All right. You got 3 out of 4. This is good. Number 5. In 1972, Lewis's first general election as NDP leader, he handily won his riding by a 50-point margin over the Liberals. In 1974, Lewis was defeated by the Liberals in the same riding and the same borders this time. What was the riding of David Lewis? If you don't have the exact name, I'll accept it if it's close enough.
I think it was York South.
And it was York South. That's insane. That's insane. Congratulations, Jay. You got 4 out of 5. Gold is still within reach. Number
2 more strikes.
6. Yes. Number 6. In 1975, Ed Broadbent won the NDP leadership race and then went on to lead the NDP in the next 4 general elections. 79, 80, 84, and 88. And we know that Broadbent's NDP did very well in 88. At the time, it was the highest number of seats that they won, with 43 seats. I would like you to rank from most seats to fewer seats Broadbent's 3 other general election results.
Okay.
You don't have to tell me the number of seats, but you have to rank the years. Second most, third most, and least.
I think the second most was 84, the third most would have been 79, and the fourth most would have been 80.
And this is wrong. It's a strike. Do you want to guess again? Or do you want to pass?
If I'd lose my last strike, eh? Okay. Wait.
No. You had a free strike on the, so you only have 1 strike. Right. Well, this is your second strike.
No, I
got
no. Yeah, I missed my first one. I missed.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, it's not that many other permutations.
Oh, you want to so much.
79, 84,
You're guessing again?
80. 79, 84, 80.
And this is wrong, my friend.
Oh, God. All right. Those are all my strikes.
32 seats in 1980. 30 seats in 84.
Oh, really?
26 seats in 79. So it was close. But, yeah. So you're out of strikes, and you have 4 points out of 8. Sorry,
4 points out of 6.
Sorry.
All right.
Number 7.
I can still get silver.
As you can see, I'm going chronological in time, so this should get easier, maybe. I don't know. Okay. At the 1989 NDP Leadership Convention, Audrey McLaughlin, I don't know how to pronounce that, became the 4th leader of the federal NDP and the first woman to lead the federal party with representation in the House of Commons in Ottawa. McLaughlin won the leadership on the 4th ballot. Who faced her in the 4th and final ballot?
That was the former BC Premier and NDP leader Dave Barrett.
And this is correct. Wow, nice pull here. Yes, the former... it would have been interesting to have a former Premier as NDP leader. But yeah, McLaughlin went on and everything went well after that. Okay. So you got the point. 5 out of 7. You have 3 questions left. Silver is still on the table.
Yeah.
Number 8. After McLaughlin resigned in...
McLaughlin, yeah.
Okay. I just read it phonetically. Okay.
Hey, there's Scottish names. They're francophone. It's not easy.
After McLaughlin resigned in 95, Alexa McDonough became NDP leader in time for the 97 general election. Under McDonough, or McDonough...
No, you got it right in the first time.
Under McDonough, the NDP recovered somewhat from the disastrous 93 campaign, winning a total of 21 seats in that election, 11 of which were in these 2 provinces, respectively 6 and 5 seats. What were those provinces?
97 Nova Scotia election. And did they win 11 in Atlantic Canada? No, they couldn't have. Yeah.
No timer on this one.
Nova Scotia is definitely one of them. The other one would be...
I'll give you a hint. It's not Quebec.
Thanks. Thanks, bud.
Big help.
No, it could have... I'm just going to say it because I think was it New Brunswick?
It was not New Brunswick.
Sure.
They won 6 seats in Nova Scotia, the most, and you were right. They won 5 seats in Saskatchewan.
Yeah. Because I know McDonough did really well in Atlantic Canada, and they did win some seats in New Brunswick.
I think she won 4 in New Brunswick or something. Yeah, it was a good tally.
All right.
Okay, bronze is still on the table with 2 questions left.
Yes, but for the NDP, bronze is like gold. So let's...
Ouch! That's dagger in the
traditionally third place party. Bronze is fully appropriate and very respectable.
Yeah, the Bloc would like to have a word. Okay, number 9. Jack Layton led the NDP in 4 general elections in 2004, in 2006, in 2008, and in 2011, before his unfortunate death in the summer of 2011. Rank the seat totals for the Layton's NDP from best to worst. Again, you don't have to tell me the number of seats, but you have to rank these 4 elections from best to worst for the NDP.
I'm 99% certain they improved every time. So it'd be best would be 11, then 8, then 06, and then 04.
103 seats in 2011. 37 in 08. 29 in 06. 19 in 04. So Jack Layton increased the number of NDP seats at every election. So you got the point. Congrats.
He must be the only leader who's done that.
Federally, I'm pretty sure it is.
Because Broadbent didn't, because we just did that. I guess I don't think Douglas did. So
yeah. Okay, last question. And
this is for bronze.
This is for bronze. Are all your windows closed right now? I know you don't use dual monitors, but you don't.
I have a window that's
Matt face
of our.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't got any other windows.
Because I think when you okay, so I'll just ask the questions because I think you said the answer earlier in the episode. Okay, the federal NDP has contested 21 general elections since its creation from the CCF and the Canadian Labour Congress in 1961. Since its first election in 1962, how many times and in which elections did the NDP reach 20% of the popular vote in a general election? How many times and in which elections did the NDP get 20% of the vote?
Like at least 20, you mean?
20, yes, at least 20, yeah.
Well, definitely in 2011, when they got 30.6. And I think the only other time was in 1988, when they got just over 20. Because Mulcair got like 19.7, and that was like the third result. So I think it's only twice, and it was those two, 88 and 2011.
Final answer?
Lock it in.
And it is absolutely correct, my friend. 2011, 30.6% of the vote. 1988, 20.4%. So barely. They had in 1980, 19.8% and came close a few times, but only twice did they reach 20% of the vote. And you are correct. You get bronze. Congratulations. Yes. That was not easy. That was not an easy quiz. So
you know that meme with the guy winning bronze celebrating? Yeah,
the bottle.
Yeah.
Good for you.
All right, number of the week. Why don't I go first since it's in the theme? So my number of the week will be 100,000 about. That is the number of members that are eligible to vote in the NDP leadership race. Very curious to see what the actual turnout will be. It is one member, one vote, and doesn't matter where the votes are coming from. So it's just the number of votes you get, and 100,000 is the sort of the denominator, and we'll find out how many New Democrats actually have cast their vote in these last few weeks and up to Saturday, I think, is the final day to vote. Anyway,
yeah, I think so.
That'll be my number of the week.
Okay, interesting. For my number of the week, I will go back to the Angus Street Institute vote and go see Mark Carney's personal numbers. Now, the Angus Street Institute does this tracker where they ask approval of the Prime Minister in every federal poll that they do. And in this poll, Mark Carney had 59% approval, 34% disapproval. Now, that's a plus 25. A number which would be enviable, for any premier, any prime minister. But last month it was plus 32. And so again, have we reached peak Carney, and will Mr. Carney and the Liberals level off to a more reasonable plateau? And I say reasonable, you know what I mean, not saying that it was unreasonable, but it was too high. No party gets to that high in Canada usually. So perhaps we will see a healthy lead for the Liberals, but not a crazy lead for the Liberals in the next few months. I will follow these numbers with much attention.
All right, very good. All right, well, that'll be it. So, as you mentioned, we'll be at the NDP convention, and we will have at least one episode for members of the Patreon. Probably, a little bit of a look at how the convention is feeling and the vibe we're getting from people. And we'll have another episode. We'll hopefully try to have an episode on Sunday reacting to the results.
Yes.
So anyway, if you want to have access to those episodes, go to thenumberspod.ca to support the podcast, and we appreciate it. And Philippe, I'm looking forward. Never been to Winnipeg, never been to Manitoba, so I'll see you there.
Absolutely. And if you like the podcast and you are there, come and say hi. And if you don't like the podcast, well, come and say hi nevertheless. It'll be fun to
just
meet.
Be nice.
That's right. Merci beaucoup, Eric. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great weekend.